welcome to the Recovery Daily Podcast. I'm your host, Rachel Miller. I'm a grateful recovering alcoholic and stroke survivor. And guess what? Today you get to rest. So the plank challenge is day 6, and no matter if you are on the 3 or 5 minute track, today is a rest day. I also wanted to mention that if you do get to the point where you just can't seem to increase the amount of time, I encourage you to continue to do the plank challenge every day, that I read out the time, and just keep your time where it is at the longest that you've been able to hold it. And I think that is way still successful. So I don't want anybody to give up out there if you can't go all the way to 3 minutes or all the way to 5 minutes, depending on which track you've chosen. Okay, so today I'm going to talk about the concept of live and let live. This simple phrase that I've heard my entire life has actually become a big deal for me in recovery. It's really one of the big differences between still being wrapped up in my head and being emotionally sober. So once I was sober and able to control that which is between my heart and my fingertips, meaning me, I heard this phrase much differently. Combined with the fact that I can't control people, places, and things, anything outside of my fingertips, I realized that much of what other people do and say is not my business. Of course, I need to protect myself, but a lot of times what other people are doing and saying doesn't impact me, and it isn't my business. It's hard to watch, but it's still not my business. And whether I like it or not, people are going to make decisions and say things that piss me off. And I want to talk about how I manage those feelings in this phase of my life, with in particularly trying to prioritize my health and stroke recovery, and yet it seems like my doctors don't seem to have the same idea as I do about prioritizing me and my health, right? Because they have hundreds of people that they have to prioritize as well. So right now, that's really the thing that gets me riled up lately, is having to wait 2 months between each appointment when I'm suffering in the middle. Literally, I've got a headache every day, every single day, and have a hard time really just being and being normal. And it's aggravating, to say the least. So how do I not speak unkindly to them or to insurance people or people who are telling me things that I don't want to hear? I'm dealing with that a lot. And I actually I had my psychiatrist appointment today, and I talked to her a little bit about what I can control and what I can't control. So I had an interesting talk. I'm not going to cover that today, but I'll look into maybe expanding on that in another episode, possibly. So the best thing I can do for me is to keep relationships in my life, not to get rid of them because somebody made me mad or anything like that. It's really important, especially in stroke recovery right now, that I continue to keep my stress level low and not try to make big decisions regarding relationships. And that is something that I learned early on in sobriety. The first year is you really don't want to make big decisions in your life when you are recovering, when you're prioritizing your health. And that I think has a lot to do with how you're just really foggy during the first year. So it's important that you don't make a lot of big life changing decisions in that first year when you're kind of have a little bit of a cloudy headedness. But I feel the same way right now in my stroke recovery, that I can't make big decisions for the most part. That's for me to keep my stress level down, because the more stressed I get, the more it aggravates all of my symptoms. So, what do I do when I'm angry? Because I've been angry. I've been angry a lot over the past 7 months. And I'm going to tell you how I do it, and not how I do it without coming across like I'm killing somebody with kindness, which I'm an expert at, or being disingenuous or superficial. And the bottom line for me is that I actually mean it. I'm not putting on a front. I'm actually changing from within in order to manage that relationship. So the act of like killing somebody with kindness or being superficial, that's when I want them to see something that I'm not actually feeling. And the answer for me, for this concept of live and let live, is that I'm actually changing on the inside through forgiveness and acceptance in order to keep the relationship afloat, to work at the relationship, to live and let live. And I truly have to practice forgiveness and acceptance over and over and over again. And I don't know that I'm ever going to be an expert at it, but I do want to talk about what's going on in my head when I'm talking about forgiveness and acceptance. So my drinking history definitely got me tangled up with other people, and alcohol made its way into all of my interactions with people. I said things that were not kind, and a lot of those things I don't even remember saying. But I know that I did because I know the results of those conversations and what effect it had on the other people. As I stepped into sobriety, I realized the power of letting go of what I can't control. Along with letting go of alcohol, I practiced letting go of the need to control things beyond my fingertips. And this, again, did not come easy. And it's still, I have a real tendency to want to control people and what they do, and how they act, and the decisions that they make. And this letting go is the thing that keeps me sane, so that I'm not affected by the actions of others, affected in a way that I'm just wrapped around the axle about it, because that's what it can do to me. So this concept of live and let live, when I heard it, as over the years before I got sober, it sounded to me like indifference. And I did not have that. I have never been one of indifference. I have been so emotionally affected by other people throughout my life that it was almost irritating to me to have somebody say, live and let live, live and let live. And I'm like, no, I'm going to change them. But live and let live is actually not indifference. It is rooted in forgiveness and acceptance. It's actually something that needs to happen on the inside of me in order for me to live and let live. I don't like to think of it as tolerance of others, because tolerance to me means putting up with somebody. And if I'm putting up with somebody, I am definitely going to come across as disingenuous, superficial, and a big fat biatch. I promise you that. The killing them with kindness thing will insert itself, and that's when I really come across as a nasty uh, person. So I cannot try to practice tolerance. I have got to make a decision inside of me. Am I going to keep this person in my life and forgive and accept? Or am I going to remove this person from my life? Now, there are some situations where I can't remove the person from my life. If it's a coworker or something like that. And if that is the case, I have to tell myself everybody is sick in some way. And it's true. It almost makes me laugh sometimes, depending on who it is I'm talking about and what they may have done or how they may act. Sometimes it actually gives me a little bit of a giggle when I'm like, well, everybody's sick in some way, but it's really a practice of acceptance to say that to myself. So, also putting up with is definitely not as eloquent as live and let live, I think. So live and let live means to recognize that others are doing the best that they can with what they have. And I have done the best that I can throughout my life with what I've been given. And sometimes what I've been given is something that I don't know what to do with. I don't know how to handle it. And alcoholism and my stroke are two of those things. And I may come across to other people like, especially before I got sober, like, what does she think she's doing? After I had my stroke and I went back to work for 2 years because I was in denial that I really had been impacted to the extent that I had, other people were saying to me, "What are you doing? Why are you doing this to yourself?" I was doing the best with what I had. I was doing what I thought was right. And I have to remember that when I come across other people that are not doing what I would do in their situation. But I can't judge what they're doing because I don't have what they have. I don't have the experience and the background that they have to base decisions on. If I'm looking at what somebody else is doing, what decisions they're making, I'm basing that judgment on my experience. And that is not fair. It's not fair for me to look at somebody else, a coworker, for example. It's not fair for me to look at this coworker and be like, he's an idiot, and I've done it. I'm ashamed to say that, but I've done it. And if I really back up and think, he's not an idiot, he's doing the best he can with what he has, with his experience. He's basing his decisions on his experience. And if those decisions are not the same decisions that I would make based on my decision, then I have two options. I can step in and help, but if that help can't or won't be received, or there's some reason why I shouldn't step in, then I need to accept it and get back to my own business. So other people's best may not align with my expectations and my best. And I think they might be off track, lazy, but it's their life, their choices. Who am I to act like I'm doing this human being thing better than they are? I have made my life a royal mess at times. So, why on earth do I think that I can approach somebody else's life and make decisions or judge their decisions based on my life? It doesn't make any sense, but we do it anyway, you know? One of the most liberating aspects of my sobriety has been learning not to react impulsively. It's not only something that I have been reminded of constantly in sobriety, but I was also reminded of it, thank you, boss, so many times at work because I just wanted to react. And it's not the best thing to do. It's just going to damage relationships. It's like to stop myself from reacting, though, is like trying to stop a high-speed train in its tracks and to not react, bite my tongue, or walk away and put it in my God box until I come up with some thoughtful response that's ready to be introduced to the other party. Like, it sounds so nice and, oh, okay, that's all you do. But it's crazy hard to do. But with practice, you can do it. I believe that you can do any of this stuff with practice. It's hard. It's not easy, but it can be done if you really take one thing that you want to do. I want to do this so bad. I want to stop reacting to people. How can I do that? Well, you have to make a commitment to do that. You can't commit to all of these things that we talk about in the program all at once, in the podcast, all at once. Like, pick something that, I want to get better at this, and make a decision that how you're going to get better. Okay, every time this person makes me mad, I am going to fill in the blank, whether that is I'm going to write it down on a sticky note and put it in a box, or I'm going to take a walk around the block, or I'm going to go into the bathroom and count to 10. Any of these things that make you pause and not react, because that space between reacting and responding is where forgiveness and acceptance takes place. So why is live and let live so important to recovery? I think back to how often my drinking was a reaction to my interactions with other people, whether I was seeking approval and I didn't get it, whether I was avoiding somebody not being nice to me, or maybe not even not being nice, but being, what's the word? Like, when I was drinking, if somebody tried to give me suggestions, we'll call them, it would piss me off. Like, I didn't want to hear anybody telling me what to do or how to do it, ever. So to me, it came across as criticism. And I'm sure the person was just trying to help me, because we all try to help each other get through this life. Well, I wasn't accepting help back then. So I would drink to avoid that quote unquote criticism. or just when I was simply feeling out of place around other people. Alcohol was my misguided solution. And in sobriety, I found a new way to cope that doesn't involve drinking. When I was drinking, I often wasn't reacting outwardly towards other people. I was reacting inwardly, as if drinking a half a box of wine a night was going to give me that comfort or that approval or make that person who's trying to criticize me go away. Um, I wasn't ruining relationships in your, way of lashing out as much as I was wrongfully changing my perspective through a thick lens of wine and making myself emotionally sick about things that could have been resolved so much easier, things that weren't even a problem. Had I not been drinking, I would have been able to reason out that, I am making a mountain out of a molehill, as they say. So it's natural to encounter people who rub us the wrong way, of course. And that's even in my sobriety program. And we have a saying in the sobriety program about principles before personalities. And that is so that no matter who's in your meetings, who you get along with or don't get along with, you're all in there for the same reason, to stay sober, stay alive, physically and emotionally sober. And the key is learning to live with the differences. It doesn't mean that I have to agree with everyone or abandon my own principles if somebody is, irritating me. But I do need to try to understand rather than be understood when necessary, and respectfully agree to disagree. So this, I have to say, the idea of saying, let's agree to disagree, that has always worked for me, except for once. There was a person in my life who I tried to say, we're going to need to agree to disagree. And he said, no, you're wrong. You're ridiculous. So when I encounter somebody like that, somebody that even if I try to practice my principles, won't let me, somebody who is trying to break me down, because there are people, because they are sick, everyone is sick in some way. What do I do? My job is simply to make decisions about who I'm going to expose myself to. For instance, that person who said, no, you're wrong, you're ridiculous, is no longer in my life. It was unhealthy for me to be exposed to that kind of treatment. And, in that example, I couldn't even protect myself with forgiveness and acceptance. I tried to do what was right for me, and sparing the relationship. But the other person didn't want to do that. And that's fine if they don't want to do it. I can't control them, but I can walk away. And I can decide, I don't want to have this in my life. It's not good for me. It's unhealthy. And quite honestly, it could lead me to a drink. And that is my number one priority in my life, is to take away things that could lead me to a drink, address them immediately. That's where this podcast gave birth, was me discovering that I was at risk of taking a drink because my mind was spinning about stroke recovery and leaving my job and stuff. And I said, I got to get this out of my head. I got to stay sober. And here we are. So, sometimes it's important to reevaluate the value of a relationship, or whether it's lacking, and if you need to take an action. I've taken action quite a few times in sobriety, and when I was drinking, I would have just lived with it because I didn't think I was worth any more than that. I didn't think I deserved any more than that. I didn't think it was possible to really carve out who's in your life and who's not, you know? And it's taken me years to figure this out, and years to be brave enough to actually advocate for my mental and emotional health, and take action, and even more years to be confident enough to not regret the past nor wish to shut the door on it. See what I did there? That was yesterday's topic. So no one can drive me to drink. I have to give them my consent to drive me to drink. When I say, oh, they made me drink, I was drinking because of, X, Y, and Z. That is BS. That is not how it works. Our recovery is ours to protect. Our joy is locked safe inside us. Nobody can take it. Nobody can steal it. If I want to give up my joy and hand it over to somebody else, that's what I have to do. I have to do it. I have to let them have it because it's mine. It's mine to protect. And we choose not to let resentment or frustration dictate our actions or reactions. Instead, focus on living my best life, surfacing the joy that is inside of me because I'm not willing to give it to anybody, and finding fulfillment in my day. So next time someone gets on your nerves, and it will happen, take a breath. That is the best thing that you can do, I think. Take a breath and think, live and let live. And if you have to say it 10 times, say it 10 times, live and let. Because if you're saying that, if you're taking a breath and you're saying live and let live, live and let live, then you're not reacting, right? So focus on what's between your heart and your fingertips, because that's all you can control. That your happiness, and let others navigate their own paths. And if you watch them crash and burn, it's upsetting, but honestly, it's not your business, right? By embracing this, we open our hearts to a more peaceful and accepting way of life. So that's what I have for you today. And thank you for tuning in to the Recovery Daily podcast. I'll talk to you tomorrow.